I'm writing here because I need advice on something that's been tearing me up inside. My wife and I have been together for 20 years, married for 18. We've got two amazing sons, 20 and 18. Our marriage has had its ups and downs, but lately, things have been rough. We're not as close as we used to be. There's no affection, and we argue a lot more. I thought it was just a rough patch, but now I'm not so sure. I guess I should start at the beginning. We met 20 years ago in a club. I was living a pretty unhealthy lifestyle back then, drinking a lot, partying too hard. One night, I saw her sitting at the bar, looking as lost as I felt. We were both pretty drunk, but after a couple more drinks, I finally worked up the courage to talk to her. We hit it off and ended up dancing, then at her place. The next morning, I woke up and knew I wanted to see her again. I got her number, and a week later, I called her for a date. That's how it all started. Fast forward 20 years, and we've built a life together. Now, about 2 months ago, I noticed something different. I run a small transport company, and it's been doing well enough to provide for our family. My wife works in an office, and she's always been career-driven. I thought it was great she had her own thing going. But lately, she's been distant. No kisses, no touches, just cold. I figured maybe she was stressed at work, so I decided to do something nice for her. One Friday, I decided to surprise her by bringing her favorite lunch to her office. I thought it might cheer her up and maybe help us reconnect. I walked in with the food, but when I got to her office, I saw something that shattered my world. Through the window, I saw her in a very compromising position with her boss. They were so wrapped up in each other, they didn't even notice me standing there. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I didn't confront them right then. I just turned around and walked out, my head spinning. I went back to my car, sat there for a few minutes, and then drove to a park nearby to think. My mind was racing with all sorts of thoughts: anger, betrayal, confusion. How long had this been going on? Why didn't I see it? What was I going to do now? After that, I couldn't look at her the same way. Every time she touched me or talked to me, I felt disgusted. I decided to get my thoughts together and figure out my next steps. I mean, if she really did cheat on me, I wanted to make sure she didn't get away with anything. We've built everything together, but if she's going to betray me like this, I don't think she deserves any of it. I'm trying to keep it together for our boys. They're old enough to understand if things go south, but I don't want them to get caught in the middle of this mess. I haven't told them anything yet, and I don't know if I should. Part of me wants to protect them from the ugly truth, but another part of me thinks they deserve to know what their mom has done. I feel like I'm living a nightmare. Every day I go to work and try to keep my mind off things. But it's hard. I can't eat, I can't sleep, and I'm constantly on edge. I even started thinking about hiring a private investigator to gather evidence, but I'm not sure if that's the right move. I don't want to believe it's true, but I can't ignore what I saw. So, I started observing her more closely. I noticed she was getting home later than usual, saying she had to stay late at the office to finish projects. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was true. Maybe she was just really busy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I checked her phone one night while she was in the shower, but there was nothing suspicious. It made me feel even more paranoid, like she was hiding things too well. The tension between us grew. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was usually to argue. I asked her if something was wrong, if she was unhappy with me, but she always brushed it off, saying she was just stressed from work. I wanted to believe her, but the image of her with her boss was burned into my mind. A couple of weeks later, I decided to follow her after work. I felt like a creep, but I needed to know the truth. I waited outside her office building and watched as she left. She didn't head home right away. Instead, she drove to a fancy restaurant across town. I parked a few spots away and watched as she met her boss in the parking lot. They walked in together, looking very comfortable with each other. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed into the restaurant, my heart pounding in my chest. I found them at a table in the back, laughing and holding hands. They looked up as I approached, their faces going pale. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at them, feeling the weight of the betrayal crushing me. My wife finally spoke, her voice shaking. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I think it's pretty obvious what's going on." Her boss tried to intervene, but I cut him off. This is between me and my wife, I said, glaring at him. Stay out of it. I turned back to her, feeling the tears start to well up. How long? How long has this been going on? She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. A few months, she admitted. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why did you do this? She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I don't know. I was unhappy, and he made me feel special. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought we were happy. I thought we had a good life together. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, she said. I never meant for it to go this far. The boss, seeing an opening, stood up and tried to apologize. Something in me just snapped. I don't remember making a conscious decision. I just remember my fist connecting with his face. He staggered back, and I hit him again, this time harder. He fell to the ground, and I stood over him, shaking with rage. Don't you ever come near my wife again, I spat, barely able to control myself. The restaurant staff quickly intervened, pulling me away and threatening to call the police. My wife was crying, begging me to stop, but I was beyond reasoning. I managed to calm down enough to leave without causing more of a scene, but the damage was done. I walked out, my hands shaking, and got back into my car. I drove around for hours trying to clear my head. When I finally went home, she was there, waiting for me. We talked for hours, but nothing she said could change what I had seen. I decided to stay in a hotel for a few days to give myself some space. I needed time to think, to figure out what I was going to do. She called and texted constantly, begging me to come home, saying we could work things out, but I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. In the meantime, I reached out to a lawyer to understand my options. I didn't want to rush into a decision, but I needed to be prepared. The lawyer advised me to gather as much evidence as possible before making any moves. I met with my wife one last time to tell her my decision. She cried and begged me to reconsider, but my mind was made up. I told her I would be filing for divorce and that I wanted full custody of our boys. I didn't want them to be around her boss or to see their mother in that light. She tried to argue, saying she deserved a second chance, but I couldn't see a way forward. I left her there, sobbing, and went back to the hotel. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I knew it was the right decision. Now I'm trying to pick up the pieces and move on with my life. I'm focusing on my boys and my business, trying to keep things as normal as possible for them. But it's hard. If anyone has any advice or has been through something similar, I'd really appreciate your thoughts. How do you move on from something like this? How do you rebuild your life after everything falls apart? Thanks for reading. I'm sitting in this hotel room right now trying to make sense of everything. I want to thank all of you for your support and kind words. It means more than you know. The past few days have been a whirlwind, and I'm still trying to process it all. When I first decided to leave, I had almost no evidence to give my lawyer. It was just my word against hers, and I knew that wouldn't hold up in court. So while holed up in the hotel, I searched for a private detective. I found one who seemed reputable and discreet, and I hired him on the spot. The waiting for his findings was excruciating, but I knew it was necessary. In the meantime, I reached out to some friends. I needed to get out of my head for a bit, and I thought a night out might help. We decided to hit up a bar. It had been a while since I let loose, and I figured if there was ever a time to drown my sorrows, it was now. We drank a lot, talked even more. Eventually, I broke down and told them what had happened. They were shocked, of course. No one really knows what to say in a situation like this. But they supported me, told me I should divorce her, that I deserved better. It was comforting to hear, even if it didn't make the pain go away. We kept drinking, and before I knew it, the night was a blur. I ended up back at the hotel somehow, my mind swirling with everything that had happened. I passed out almost immediately, exhausted and numb. The next morning I woke up with a pounding headache and a sense of dread. My phone was buzzing, and it was the private detective calling. He told me he had found the evidence I needed and that we should meet. My heart was racing as I got ready and headed to our meeting spot. We met in a small, discreet cafe. He handed me an envelope filled with photos and documents. As I flipped through them, my stomach turned. There it was, undeniable proof of my wife's betrayal. Pictures of her with her boss, texts, emails, everything. I returned to the hotel and sat on the bed, staring at the evidence. It hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for 20 years, had betrayed me. Our whole life together, everything we had built, was shattered in an instant. I couldn't believe she would throw it all away for this. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner, for trusting her so completely. Seeing those photos, reading those messages, it was like reliving the betrayal over and over again. My sons, our family, they didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this mess. I was filled with a mix of rage and sadness. I wanted to confront her, to scream at her, to make her feel the pain I was feeling. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. It would just make things worse. I couldn't help but think back to when we first met. We were so young, so full of hope and dreams. We built a life together, raised two amazing sons, and now it was all falling apart. I kept asking myself how she could do this to us, to our family. What went so wrong that she felt the need to seek comfort in someone else? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could she meet him on an equal footing, even after everything was out in the open? Didn't she care about our family, about our boys? I felt like I didn't even know her anymore. The woman I fell in love with was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't recognize. I spent hours in that hotel room, going over everything in my mind. I thought about our boys and how this would affect them. They deserved to know the truth, but I didn't want to hurt them. How do you tell your children that their mother has been unfaithful? How do you explain that the life they knew is over? I knew I had to be strong for them, to be the rock they could lean on. But it was hard. I felt so lost, so broken. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those images, those messages. It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. As I walked through the city, I thought about the future. What was I going to do? How was I going to move on from this? I knew I had to make a decision soon, but I felt paralyzed. I ended up at a park and sat on a bench, watching the world go by. I thought about my boys, about what was best for them. They were my priority now. I had to protect them, to make sure they were okay. I knew that staying in a toxic marriage wasn't the answer. They needed to see that it was okay to stand up for yourself, to demand respect and honesty in a relationship. The private detective's evidence was solid. It was enough to file for divorce and to fight for custody of my boys. But it didn't make the pain any less. It didn't make the betrayal any easier to bear. I knew I had to confront her, to tell her what I had decided. But I also knew that I needed to do it calmly, rationally. I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me. I had to think about my boys, about what was best for them. I made my way back to the hotel, feeling a bit clearer but still heavy-hearted. Thank you all for listening, for your support. It means the world to me. If anyone has any advice or words of wisdom, I could really use it right now. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and I feel so lost. But I know that I have to keep going, for my boys and for myself. I wanted to give you an update on what's been happening since my last post. Thank you all for the support and advice. It means a lot during this difficult time. So much has happened, and I'm trying to stay strong for my boys and myself. After getting the damning evidence from the private detective, I contacted my lawyer immediately. I sent him everything: the photos, the emails, the texts. He assured me this was more than enough to proceed with the divorce and to strengthen my case for full custody of my sons. Now, all I could do was wait for the legal gears to turn. Next, I had to face the daunting task of informing my parents about the divorce. I knew they would be supportive, but it was still hard to admit how badly things had fallen apart. I asked them to come to my hotel so we could talk in person. When they arrived, I could see the worry etched on their faces. I took a deep breath and told them everything, from the distant behavior to the night I caught her with her boss, and finally, to the damning evidence the detective had gathered. My parents were shocked, to say the least. My mom started crying and my dad looked like he wanted to punch something. But they were supportive, as I knew they would be. They hugged me, told me that we would get through this together, and reassured me that they were there for me and the boys. Showing them the photos and messages was hard, but I needed them to understand the full extent of the betrayal. After that emotional meeting, I knew I had to tell some more friends. I needed their support and didn't want to keep repeating the story over and over. I invited a few close friends to the hotel and explained everything. They were just as shocked as my parents, but their support was unwavering. They told me I was doing the right thing and offered their help in any way I needed. Knowing I had a solid support system made me feel a bit stronger. The hardest part was yet to come, telling my boys. I couldn't let them stay in that house with their mother any longer. They needed to know the truth, and I needed to get them out of there. I decided to go to the house at night when she wasn't home. It was a calculated risk, but I didn't want a confrontation with her while trying to explain things to my sons. When I arrived, I was met with another shock. My sons told me that their mother had said I had moved in with another woman. I couldn't believe the nerve of her, spreading lies to cover up her own infidelity. I had to set the record straight immediately. I sat them down and explained everything, showing them the evidence I had. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. Seeing the hurt and confusion in their eyes broke my heart, but they deserved to know the truth. They're not little kids anymore. They're 18 and 20, old enough to understand. They took it better than I expected, though it was clear they were devastated. They started packing their things, and I wrote a note to my wife, telling her I had taken our sons. I didn't go into detail. I just said they needed to be with me right now. That night, she called me furious. She yelled that I had no right to take her children away from her, and even threatened me. I didn't know what to say, so I just hung up and didn't answer any more of her calls. I wasn't going to let her intimidate me. She also tried calling our sons. They spoke to her briefly, but they weren't buying her excuses. It was a lot of, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen," and other pathetic attempts to justify her actions. My boys were strong, though. They told her they needed some space and hung up. I was proud of them for handling it so maturely, even though I knew it was tearing them apart inside. Now we're staying at my parents' place while we figure out our next steps. It's cramped, but it's temporary. We're focusing on supporting each other and trying to move forward. The boys are dealing with it as best as they can, but I know this will take a long time to heal. I can't thank you all enough for your support. Knowing that there are people out there who understand what I'm going through and are willing to offer advice and encouragement has been a lifeline. This journey is far from over, but I know we will get through it. My priority is to protect my boys and make sure they know they are loved and supported. I'm determined to build a new life for us, one step at a time. If anyone has any advice on how to navigate these next steps, especially dealing with the legal aspects and supporting my boys through this, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here for me. I wanted to give you all another update. Thanks again for all your support. It's been a real lifeline for me. A lot has happened since my last post, and I'm trying my best to stay strong for my boys and myself. After getting my sons out of the house and into my parents' place, I realized they needed a break from all the chaos. They deserved a moment to relax and feel normal again. So I decided to take them out for a night of billiards. It was a great idea. We hadn't hung out like that in ages, and it felt good to just unwind. We laughed, talked, and learned to play a little better. It reminded me of simpler times, and I think it did the boys some good too. I decided to take the week off from work. I needed time to regroup, to be there for my sons, and to handle all the legal stuff without the added stress of my job. I'll be heading back after the weekend, but for now, my focus is on getting everything in order and supporting my boys. While I was sitting in the hotel one night, an idea struck me. I remembered that my wife's lover, her boss, is married. I recalled seeing his wife on Facebook once, so I decided to reach out to her. I knew it was a long shot, but she deserved to know the truth. I sent her a message from my account, explaining that I had evidence of her husband's infidelity and that we should meet. Surprisingly, she agreed to meet me at a nearby park. I made copies of all the photos and brought them with me. When we met, she looked anxious and worried. She asked for proof right away, so I handed her the envelope. As she flipped through the photos, her face crumbled. She asked how long this had been going on, and I told her I had only found out about it a week ago and had been dealing with it ever since. She broke down in tears, and I felt a pang of sympathy for her. We were both victims of the same betrayal. I suggested we sit down and talk, and she agreed. We found a nearby cafe and sat there for a while, just talking. She was devastated, understandably, and asked me what I planned to do. I told her I was going to sue for divorce and seek full custody of my boys. She didn't say much, just nodded and stared at the photos, still processing everything. We parted ways after that, both of us feeling the weight of what we had just discussed. In the midst of all this, I got a call from my lawyer. He informed me that everything would be ready for the trial soon and that it would likely take place in a few days. The reality of it all started to sink in. The trial was looming, and I had to be prepared for whatever was coming. As I've been going through this, I've had a lot of time to think about everything. How did we get here? How did our marriage fall apart so completely? I keep going over the years in my mind, trying to pinpoint where it all went wrong. But it's hard to find a single moment. It feels like a series of small cracks that eventually shattered everything. My boys have been incredibly strong through all of this. They're dealing with their own pain and confusion, but they're holding up. I've tried to be as honest with them as I can without overwhelming them. They deserve to know the truth, but I also want to protect them from the worst of it. As for my wife, she's been relentless. She's called and texted, begging for forgiveness one minute and then threatening me the next. I've stopped answering her calls and only respond to texts when absolutely necessary. It's clear she's not willing to accept responsibility for her actions, and I can't let her manipulate me anymore. She's also tried to reach out to the boys, but they're having none of it. They talked to her briefly, but they don't trust her anymore. Her excuses and half-hearted apologies aren't enough to mend the damage she's done. I'm proud of them for standing their ground, but I know it's taking a toll on them. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It's been a huge help to know that I'm not alone in this. If anyone has been through a similar situation and has any tips or advice, I'd love to hear from you. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to face, but knowing there are people out there who understand makes it a little easier. I'll keep you all updated as things progress. Right now, I'm focusing on my boys, getting through the trial, and trying to rebuild our lives. It's a long road ahead, but I'm determined to get through it. Thanks for listening, everyone. Your support means the world to me. Sorry for not writing sooner. 3 days have already passed since the trial, and it's been a whirlwind. I needed some time to process everything that happened. I can't say it was easy, but we got through it. Leading up to the trial, my family, my lawyer, and I worked tirelessly to prepare. We gathered all the evidence, reviewed our strategy, and rehearsed what we would say in court. My parents and some close friends were incredibly supportive, offering their help and encouragement every step of the way. We knew this was going to be a battle, and we wanted to make sure we were ready. The night before the trial, my parents, my boys, and I had a long talk. We went over everything again, making sure we were all on the same page. My sons were nervous, but I reassured them that we were doing the right thing and that we had to stay strong. My lawyer, a tough but empathetic guy, arrived later that evening to go over the final details. He was confident and calm, which helped ease some of my anxiety. The morning of the trial, we all met at the courthouse. Seeing my wife there with her lawyer was tough, but I kept my focus. My parents were there, giving me silent support, and a couple of close friends had shown up too. My wife looked nervous, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of anger and sadness, but I pushed those feelings aside. This was about protecting my boys and doing what was right. Before the trial began, we gathered in a small room to review everything one last time. My lawyer went over our strategy, reminding us to stay calm and composed no matter what. He assured me that we had a strong case and that we were going to fight for what was right. I looked at my boys and saw the determination in their eyes, which gave me the strength I needed. When the trial started, my heart was pounding in my chest. My lawyer kicked things off with a powerful opening statement, laying out the facts of the case clearly and concisely. He presented the evidence we had gathered, the photos, the emails, the texts, and methodically went through each piece, leaving no room for doubt about my wife's infidelity. My wife's lawyer tried to downplay the evidence, suggesting that it was all a misunderstanding or that it didn't paint the full picture. But my lawyer was relentless. He countered every argument with cold, hard facts, systematically dismantling their defense. It was clear that my wife was struggling to keep her composure, and her lawyer was visibly flustered. During my testimony, I spoke about how I discovered the affair, how it had affected our family, and why I believed it was in the best interest of our sons to stay with me. It was emotional, but I stayed composed, focusing on the truth. My boys also took the stand, bravely sharing their experiences and expressing their desire to live with me. Their words were heartfelt and sincere, and I could see the impact they had on the judge. My wife took the stand, trying to defend her actions. She cried, made excuses, and even tried to shift some of the blame onto me. But her story fell apart under cross-examination. My lawyer asked pointed questions, revealing inconsistencies and highlighting the selfishness of her actions. By the end of it, it was clear that she had no solid defense. After hours of testimony and cross-examinations, the judge finally delivered the verdict. The court ruled in my favor, granting me full custody of our sons and approving the divorce. There were no regrets, no final words of reconciliation. It was over. I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion wash over me. We had done it. We had fought for what was right and won. After the trial, we all went back to my parents' place. There was a sense of relief, but also a sadness that it had come to this. My sons were quiet, still processing everything, but I could tell they felt a sense of justice had been served. My parents were supportive, as always, offering words of encouragement and love. Later that evening, I found out that my wife had left town. She went to visit some friends in another state, probably to escape the aftermath of the trial. I felt a sense of closure, knowing she was gone, but also a lingering sadness for what could have been. Thank you all for your support and advice. It's been a tough journey, but knowing I had people rooting for me made all the difference. If anyone else is going through something similar, know that you're not alone. Stay strong, fight for what's right, and lean on those who care about you. We'll get through this together. Thanks for listening, everyone. Your support means the world to me. Hey, everyone. Exactly 1 month has passed since the trial, and it feels like a lifetime. I'm sorry I didn't write sooner, but I needed some time to process everything that's happened. This past month has been a mix of reflection, healing, and rediscovery. It's been challenging, but I can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. Since the trial, I haven't heard a word from my wife. No calls, no texts, not even a message to our sons or mutual friends. It's like she vanished from our lives completely. To be honest, it's been a relief. Her silence has given us the space we needed to start healing. It's like we're finally free to move on without her shadow looming over us. I forgot to mention earlier that the wife of my wife's boss, the one who was also betrayed, reached out to me. She called me shortly after the trial and thanked me for showing her the truth. She told me that she had confronted her husband and ended things with him. It was a tough conversation, but it felt good to know that at least one other person was able to find some closure and move forward. We shared a moment of understanding and mutual support before parting ways. As for my work, it's been thriving. Getting back into the routine of running my transport company has been therapeutic. There's something incredibly satisfying about focusing on work and seeing the results of my efforts. It's been a welcome distraction from the emotional turmoil, and it's given me a sense of purpose and stability. My clients have been understanding, and my team has been incredibly supportive. It's reassuring to know that while one part of my life was falling apart, another was flourishing. I've also made it a priority to spend as much time as possible with my boys. We've been making the most of our weekends, going on trips, watching movies, and just enjoying each other's company. It's been amazing to reconnect with them on a deeper level. We've had some tough conversations, but it's brought us closer together. They've shown incredible strength and maturity throughout this ordeal, and I couldn't be prouder of them. In addition to spending time with my boys, I've also made an effort to be more present for my parents. They've been our rock through all of this, providing unwavering support and love. We've had more family dinners, game nights, and just simple moments of connection. It's been a reminder of what truly matters in life, family, and the people who stand by you through thick and thin. In an effort to take better care of myself, I signed up for a gym membership. I've already visited the gym 3 times this month, and it's been a game changer. Focusing on my physical health has helped clear my mind and relieve some of the stress. It's been a while since I did something just for me, and it feels good. I'm not just working on my physical health, but my mental and emotional health too. The gym has become a new outlet for my frustration and a source of newfound energy. Reflecting on this past month, I realize how much my life has changed. The support from my boys has been incredible. They're grown, and they understand the situation well. They've been a constant source of strength and have helped me more than I can express. Watching them handle this whole ordeal with such maturity has made me incredibly proud. The road to where we are now has been long and challenging. There were days when I didn't know how I would get through, but we made it. The betrayal and heartbreak were devastating, but we've come out stronger on the other side. It's been a journey of rediscovery and resilience. To everyone who's been following my story, offering advice and providing support, thank you. Your words of encouragement and shared experiences have made a world of difference. It's comforting to know that I wasn't alone in this, that others have faced similar challenges and have come out stronger. One thing I've learned from all of this is the importance of surrounding yourself with people who genuinely care about you. My family, friends, and even strangers on the internet have shown me that there's still a lot of good in the world. It's easy to get lost in the pain and betrayal, but focusing on the positive relationships in your life can help you heal. Looking back, it's clear that this ordeal has made me a better person. I'm more patient, more understanding, and more appreciative of the people in my life. I've also learned to take better care of myself, to prioritize my well-being, and to find joy in the little things. To anyone out there going through something similar, know that it gets better. It may not feel like it now, but time does heal wounds. Surround yourself with supportive people, take care of yourself, and keep moving forward. It's a tough journey, but you're stronger than you think. As for the future, I'm focusing on continuing to build a happy and healthy life for my boys and myself. We're making new memories, setting new goals, and looking ahead with hope and optimism. The past will always be a part of us, but it doesn't define us. We're choosing to define our future on our terms. I want to wish everyone reading this the best of luck in their own journeys. May you never have to face such betrayal, but if you do, may you find the strength and support to overcome it. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, but it's also full of opportunities for growth and happiness. Thank you all again for being there for me and my family. Your support has meant the world to us. We're moving forward, stronger and more united than ever. This is the end of this chapter, but it's also the beginning of a new one.